My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds are geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and his team. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic, multiverse. It's mega Christmas, strangest franchise. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
And we're so excited to be once again talking about Batman, the Batman.
You know, in his very first appearance, he was the Batman, and then it kind of went back and forth over the years as people called him the Batman or not. Does it sound more pretentious if he like? I don't think he ever calls himself "I'm the Batman."
No, I don't think so, because it does, I feel like it does happen every once in a while. Like, people will refer to him as the Bat. Like, I feel it's one of those things. People refer to him as the Batman, but he is Batman. If that makes sense. Like,
yeah, and I think
don't like. And I feel like it's often villains will refer to him as the Batman, but then other heroes who know him will refer to him as Batman.
And I think most versions of the story, it's not like he decides I'm going to be called Batman. Like he doesn't come up with that name for himself. Certainly doesn't say I'm going to be the Batman. I think that's just a name that other people end up giving him.
I mean, Christian Bale does, but you know.
That's true, and so does Michael Keaton.
Does
yeah, you can't be Christian Bale. You gotta talk like this.
Except Keaton's already established as the Batman or as Batman, so it's hard to tell if it was like something he did. Like, you know what I mean? Because the Joker still refers to him as the Batman.
Yeah, I think it depends on the scene.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be talking about the Batman today, and if you were looking forward to us talking about the 2004 animated series, The Batman, we're not talking about that. Although I would love to talk about that someday because I think it fits into a weird spot in Batman's history, especially amongst the animated shows. But we got to get to some Doomsdays, mostly DC related, and it's just very sad. And Beeper, I know you love Michael Keaton as Batman, and I know you were holding on to the reality that he was going to come back in the Flash movie that was supposed to come out this November.
Oh, is that being pushed back?
It's been delayed from November 2022 until June 2023.
Oh, wow. That's a big one.
What's happened here is there are 5 DC movies that have had their release dates shifted.
Interesting.
And we're going to talk about why I think
the Penguin TV show.
Well, okay. So here's what's all happened. DC Super Pets, which will have Keanu Reeves as the voice of Batman.
Yep.
Was supposed to come out in May. It's now coming out at the end of July, which is when Black Adam was supposed to come out, which is now coming out in October. And then The Flash, which was supposed to come out in November, as I said, is coming out next June. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was supposed to come out December 16th. It's now coming out March 17th, so a St. Patrick's Day release. So we're basically now a year away from the release of the new Aquaman.
They're also I don't know. They're putting a big hole where they're not releasing anything. Is it because they're putting more TV shows related? I don't know. Is the Peacemaker getting a second season and the Penguin TV show happening, and so they're trying to put that in between, like Marvel kind of tried to do?
Well,
Marvel also had Shang-Chi in the middle of that too.
Yeah, well, let's get to the speculations in a moment. But then, interestingly, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, it's like the second Shazam movie, was supposed to be coming out next June, and now it's coming out this December.
So they basically switched where the Flash movie should be or should have been pushed back with that one.
They switched Shazam with where Aquaman was supposed to be, and now
Yeah,
the
but where
Flash is
Aquaman
going
was
where.
supposed to be is where the Flash would have been pushed back to normally, right?
Now the Flash would have come out the start of November, and then Aquaman was supposed
Okay.
to come out mid-December.
Yeah, but if they all had just been pushed down one spot, that's where the Flash one would have been.
Correct. Yes,
Yeah.
So it's very odd. There's also a Wonka movie, like a Wonka prequel, where Timothée Chalamet in the role of young Willy Wonka. That's supposed
Oh
to come
god,
out.
is it in the continuity of the new Willy Wonka movie?
I don't know for sure.
Is he
Oh,
supposed to be? Well, actually, I think he could pull off a young
Johnny
uh
Depp.
Johnny Depp. Yeah, like weirdly, I
Maybe.
think that could work. I just
Well,
I think it's
Aquaman took Wonka's spot, and now Wonka is coming out like next Christmas. So that one's.
hopefully it'll die before it comes. No, I shouldn't say that. Why are they making a prequel to a book that has a sequel? Like,
We'll get
you know
to
what I
the
mean?
Wonka. Don't worry. If we're still podcasting next December 2023, we'll rip
Yeah,
Wonka to
I know.
shreds.
It's just like nobody's ever done the Great Glass Elevator, and it's hilarious.
Okay, so we've had, like I said, there's 5 DC movies here that have all had their release days shifted. And but when this news broke, I didn't believe it because literally they just put out a trailer kind of saying the world needs heroes. Here's 4 DC movies that are all coming out this year. I literally saw this like world need hero promo thing before I saw the Batman and was highlighting how all 4 of these movies were going to come out this year. And then in the same set of commercials, there was the Batman Keanu Reeves DC Super Pets reveal thing. So
Yeah,
you can't tell me they were expecting this to happen. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done all that marketing.
right.
So the official explanation is that apparently, especially for Aquaman and Flash, the visual effects have been impacted by COVID-19 related delays. And so they're pushing those 2 farther ahead because they are movies that rely a lot on special effects and they don't want to rush them out.
Okay, but it seems like those are the ones that would like. Look, I feel like special effects is the kind of things that, depending on what it is easier to do with COVID-19. I guess if it's minis and like if it's miniatures filming, but those are like physical effects. I feel like special effects would be easier to do under COVID-19 unless.
I think what they might be getting at also is that both those movies suffered like filming delays because of COVID
That's
shutdowns.
Yeah, but then say that. Like, here's my theory. The Flash one is being delayed because the Batman is doing well, and they want to add more of that in it.
Well, there's a rumor that the Flash movie, which will involve an adaptation of the Flashpoint story, is
Yeah.
actually going to basically wipe out the Snyderverse. That it's going to kind of reset the timeline
Yeah,
and
boy.
get rid of all the elements that people don't like. Which, I mean, it's suffering the longest delay. It's being pushed ahead. What is that? 6, 7, almost 8 months.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then also Warner Brothers is going through another acquisition right now. There's like weird AT&T, which was the parent company of Warner Brothers, is like selling them off to this new thing that's where Warner's is merging with Discovery. So they're wondering if this is like the new leadership of this merger that are kind of saying, okay, we're not content with like where these movies are. And so we're just going to push them out, like delay their release so that we can make sure that they actually are what we want them to be.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like, I don't know, a lot of like at some point, why didn't you just plan it properly? Like, I know you can't figure those things out, but then, take a risk. Don't keep trying to reset everything.
It's also interesting the fact that the Shazam movie has been bumped up like 6 months. Like it's like, oh, this is going to come out 6 months earlier than we thought it what I couldn't understand why it was going to take so long for this movie to come out, because they finished filming it some time ago. So I was kind of like, why is this movie so far away?
Maybe this is closer to when they originally wanted to release it. I feel like this is likely, but like they were still scared to release movies, but with Spider-Man and now the Batman and a few other things, they might not be afraid to set it up anymore. If you know what I mean?
Mm. I guess I'm just sad because I was looking forward to seeing the Flash movie this year, and
Oh
hearing
yeah.
that it's been pushed ahead so far. Aquaman getting moved, it had the same release date as Avatar 2. So everyone was kind of like, ooh, like that's pretty bold of them to go against Avatar. And apparently this new Avatar is going to have a lot of underwater stuff, which would also, put it in, comparison to Aquaman. So maybe it's smart for them to have moved away from the Avatar release date.
Eh. Or maybe Avatar is just gonna fail because nobody cares about it anymore.
Let's hope that happens, honestly. But
Okay, good.
then
I'm
it's
not the
like,
only one who hopes that Avatar crashes and burns hard. Okay,
yeah,
I'm
but
glad.
then Shazam is coming out the same time as Avatar 2 now, so it's like they're willing to kind of like throw
Shazam
Shazam
under
to
the bus.
the Avatar wolves and then like save Aquaman some trouble.
I mean, it's a weird one because both of those were their kind of more successful early stages one, right? Like that and Wonder Woman. You know, those three are the ones that did better, or at
Yeah.
least were better received.
Yeah. So in the
So
end, we're still gonna get 4 DC movies this year because the
just not
Batman's
this
already come
four
out.
we wanted, or
Yeah.
not the four we were expected. I don't know. I feel like Batman is more of a. We'll get to that, but I feel like the Batman was more of a movie I wanted than probably some of those others are going to end up being.
Yeah, I should say we were going to have 5, including the League of Super Pets, and now we're only gonna have 4, which I mean, the last time we had more than one DC movie in a year was like when Shazam and Joker came out in the same year, and those are 2 very different movies.
Yeah, but both did very well.
Yeah, I mean Shazam didn't make a ton of money, but
That's true.
it did fairly well with the critics.
But as far as like people believing in DC again, I think those two movies went a long way. Like, did a lot of work.
Sure. So, of the 3 DC movies we have left this year with Super Pets, Black Adam, and Shazam: Fury of the Gods, which one would you say you're most interested in?
Um, oof. Mm,
And remember, Black Adam has Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate.
yeah, who's Black Adam again?
Like,
No,
who's the
not the
character?
hero,
Or
the actor who's playing Black Adam.
Dwayne Johnson.
It is, yeah. I don't know. I kind of ragged on Dwayne Johnson a little bit last time, and I feel like no, but I also feel like he's not necessarily the best fit for Black Adam. Like, I feel like it might not work. So I'm gonna go with Shazam. I want to see if they can hold the course, or if it's just gonna crash and burn and everybody's gonna hate it. So I'm more excited about Shazam. And probably, honestly, Super Pets as the next, just because I got nothing better to look forward to.
Yeah, I think I'm honestly looking forward to Super Pets. It kind of makes sense actually now that I think about that Shazam and Black Adam are released closer together, because people might not realize this, but Shazam and Black Adam are like contemporaries. Like they're characters that are supposed to be, they live from in the same little pocket of the world.
Okay. I did not know that.
Like Black Adam is supposed to be like the enemy of the Shazam family in some senses. Like his outfit's the same. There's a big lightning bolt on the front if you didn't
Yeah.
catch
I
that.
knew that. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
So
enough
other
talking
than
about.
DC, were there other duels to delay, or is it just DC's
It
changing
was
its
just
whole
the
lineup?
DC and Wonka.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't know Wonka was happening, and yeah.
But let's get into talking more about the Batman. Now,
Ooh.
Beeper, I don't think you've been a part of any of our Batman-centric conversations over the years. So, like, what is your secret origin with Batman?
Oh wow. Okay. Probably just my parents humming the 1960s Batman theme when I was younger. Like, Like just the na 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 na, and just like knowing that Batman existed and expecting it to be this kind of weird, slightly campy thing because that's what my parents knew him as. And then I think that kind of held until honestly until probably The Dark Knight, and then it was like, "Oh, this is not the same." And then I started getting into actual comics and it was more interesting. Um and then I just yeah,
And yet,
and,
so
and I guess
Christian
it
Bale was your
evolved from
first
there.
like movie Batman.
Maybe. I think so. Um, sorry. Well, movie, yes. I did see parts of Batman the Animated Series before The Dark Knight, actually, now that I think of it.
Okay, good.
But not like the
I was
entire, like
worried.
I wasn't watching it. I just like saw it with like saw some episodes with my cousins. So I wasn't like fully into it, but I did learn about that before I got into before I watched the the movie. But yeah, Christian Bale would have been my first Batman movie experience.
And yet, since then, you've come around to thinking Michael Keaton is the best Batman.
Yeah, I don't think that's a yeah, definitely. And I think we're going to talk about the Batman and Pattinson's Batman. Like I think Christian Bale's Batman worked for the movie they were making with The Dark Knight, definitely. But I just don't like him as Batman or Bruce Wayne much. Like more as Batman than Bruce Wayne, but I guess we can get into some of that because I wasn't part of the episodes talking about my favorite Batman, so I might just throw some of my hot takes in there.
Now, did you know that this movie was originally supposed to be a Ben Affleck Batman movie?
How different was the script though?
Oh, very different. So basically, like what
Because
happened
like
was
it's year two, it can't be Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck is old man
no,
Bruce.
yeah,
Like
yeah. So basically, what happened was is that after BVS, Batman versus Superman, and Justice League, it was announced that Ben Affleck was going to star and direct a Batman film featuring his version of the character. And the script that they had written ended up being more like a Batman adventure where he was kind of going around the world, and Joe Manganiello's version of Deathstroke was going to be a big part of it.
oh
I guess when Matt Reeves was brought onto the project, who ended up directing the Batman, he said that script felt like a James Bond story almost for him, and that wasn't the story he was interested in telling. Ben Affleck, after the failure of like Justice League, he was going through hard things in his own life, and he kind of tried to distance himself from the project. So for a while, it was like, oh, is he was writing, directing, and starring in the movie, and then he kind of backed out of the directing, and then he kind of getting just like out of the movie altogether, and then it turned more into like when they brought Matt Reeves on as director, he said, I don't want to tell this story that Ben Affleck wrote. I want to tell my own story about Batman.
yeah,
And then that's where this idea of it being like a rebooted continuity came in.
interesting. I mean, it is kind of too bad we didn't get a Ben Affleck Batman movie, I think, because I think I liked his Batman, I liked his Bruce Wayne, and I think it would have been nice to have another movie, but at the same time, in retrospect, looking at like we were talking about, like the Flash movie is pretty much going to reboot the BVS continuity, and I know that like Ben Affleck's Batman wasn't one of the most hated things about that, but it still wasn't one of the things people enjoyed the most either.
Yeah, I feel the same
So
way. I really wish the Ben Affleck Batman would have had a chance to be in his own story, especially where the journey the character goes on. It's like, yeah, we meet him in a very low, very dark place, but he becomes more hopeful by the end of Justice League, whether it's the Zack Snyder or Joss Whedon version. So I would love to see him trying to take his Batman to the next level. And he is going to be in that Flash movie for a short period of time. So I guess we'll get some kind of closure on his Batman, but I think he really would have benefited from, again, having his own adventure. But sadly, that's not what happened here.
yeah, I mean, it's also kind of just I mean, I know we're late to the party saying this, but like, it was kind of one of the problems with BVS, right? Is like, well, this Batman doesn't have his own movie. You don't exactly know who he is, and I think Ben Affleck did a really good job of demonstrating who he is. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like really quickly, he established what kind of a Bruce Wayne this is and where he is at his life, and I really like that. And we haven't like, I guess we're gonna talk about this. Like, it's another start, young Batman, and it's not bad, but like at some point, can we just have a movie where it is like Batman as we recognize him, like the guy who is already, in full control of himself, the guy who is the knight, who is, not just starting it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you include the two guys who played Batman in the different movie serials from the 40s, this would make Robert Pattinson the 9th actor to play Batman in a feature film.
Yeah, that's a lot. And like, yeah. And again, like, maybe we should talk about the movie because I will talk about some of the things, but like, he worked for, and a lot, like, Batman has had a very long run, one of the longest runs in comic history. It's one of the most successful comics. There's been tons of versions of him, so it's not like you have to do a specific version for a movie either. But at the same time, some things just keep repeating themselves, and I'm not sure that's the things that we want to keep repeating with the character.
Yeah. Like most movies that are being made now, this thing has been plagued by COVID-19 delays. They started filming in January 2020. So when the global shutdown happened on March 14th, they were they weren't back to working until I think it was April 1st or May. They were started working on the movie again. And pretty shortly after that, the movie was supposed to come out in June 2021. And then its release date was shifted to October 2021. And then that obviously didn't happen either. So it then got pushed ahead to this March 2022 release.
I think it's better and more put together than other movies that had that amount of time to work, but it's, yeah. Let's get into actually talking about the movie.
All right. So just quickly, box office wise, this movie did very well. Its first weekend, it made $134 million, which means that it, outside of No Way Home, it's the highest grossing opening weekend of the pandemic. And after its second weekend, it surprisingly only had a 51% drop, which is very good for a big budget movie like this. Usually huge films like this will drop at least 60 to 70%
Yeah.
in their second weekend. So the fact that it only went down 51% would suggest that it is actually holding well and that people are excited to see it.
I think it's also somewhat indicative that people didn't have the highest hopes and were pleasantly surprised by it. Because I feel like that was like a general theme for it, is that a lot of people were like, "Hey, this was better than we thought it was going to be," and now, and like, people who initially saw it, and like, I think the critical response to it was really good, and then people were like, "Oh, that might be worth going to see it now."
Yeah, and as of the end of its second weekend, it's outside of No Way Home, it's the highest grossing film to come out since the pandemic, sitting at $238 million. And it's technically now the highest grossing film of 2022 domestically because of No Way Home's nearly $800 million. It only made like 220 of it in 2022. So
Yeah.
this is, for now at least, the highest grossing film of the year. So yes, Beeper, give us the Blu-ray case description for The Batman.
All everyone wants to do is unmask you. But I'm looking at the real you right now.
You'd be surprised what even a good man is capable of.
Who are you under there? What are you hiding?
We all have our scars, Bruce. Maybe this is all coming to an end.
In Gotham City, a light shines at night. It's not just a symbol. Wait, oh shit, I forgot the line now. You meet Batman as a young, kind of rash vigilante, working with the cops, kind of, but also figuring himself out. And a serial killer Riddler is helping him uncover some corruptions and secrets about this town that he may or may not want to unveil. Will he be able to save the city's soul, or will he succumb to his darker justice?
Or vengeance.
Oh yeah, that too. Disappointments. This isn't a real spoiler. I wish he would have gone from saying "I'm vengeance" to "I am justice." Like, just say it. You know, it's also a thing that Batman says.
All right, so just before we say anything else, did you enjoy this movie?
I did.
Okay, good.
Very
So
much.
did I.
Like, more than I thought I would. Even after getting really good reviews from people who are actual DC fans.
Well, last week I kind of teased it up by saying that I felt like I was reading an issue of Detective Comics watching this movie.
Yeah.
And I maintain that everything feels like it's the comic books come to life, as opposed to, some, like, I've harped on the Nolan movies for kind of just trying to like suck the essence of the Batman lore and then kind of sprinkle it into a real world setting. And for some people, that's what they want out of a superhero movie, is like, okay, how do you take the core and then apply it to something more realistic? But for me, as a fan of the Batman world, I'm like wanting to see that world on screen.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into it a little bit later. I do think this movie still kind of suffers from not from like superhero movie syndrome, for lack of a better word, where it is still kind of like, oh no, this is still a superhero movie. But I definitely don't. It's not the worst.
Yeah, and
Defense of
this movie's not perfect. I will admit that. And
yeah. So before we gush too much, like it's not perfect, and there are some things that didn't really work. But I do agree they were trying and succeeded to a high degree to make the Batman world actually show up in this movie, instead of just having a movie where a guy called Batman is and does similar things to Batman. Like, even just like Gotham City was Gotham City, which is something we haven't seen, I think, in a while. Like,
okay, here's my hot take.
yeah, go for it.
I want to say this is the best movie with Batman in it, or this is the best Batman movie we've ever had. But, because there have been some good ones that have come out, I think most people will still say The Dark Knight is the best Batman movie. And what I think I want to believe now is that The Dark Knight is just the overall best film that
Featuring
has Batman in it.
Yeah.
But I think this is, in terms of, if the goal is to just be like a Batman movie, I think this is the best Batman movie.
I mean, Mask of the Phantasm still exists, right?
Sure.
Or are we going for live action?
I guess we're gonna
Okay.
compare it just
And
in
yes,
live action.
I agree with you.
Because there are problems with the plot of this, and there's some things that don't work.
Yeah, there are definitely problems, and like, but at the same time, there were massive problems with the Dark Knight movies too, and like, I don't know, I never really like, yeah, I think, like you said, the Dark Knight was the best movie featuring Batman, but at the same time, this is giving it a good run for its money, I think is fair to say as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
And
I don't think that this is like, I think it's just because, yeah, The Dark Knight was such a well-crafted film, but this is the closest thing we've had to it as well.
absolutely. It's been funny, like, telling people, oh, this is a movie where it's going to focus on Batman being a detective. And they're like, oh, like, what? And I'm like, yeah, in the comics, Batman is like the world's greatest detective. And people I know are surprised by that.
Yeah. No, I know.
Because,
And
yeah, the movies we've had haven't really focused on that very much.
yeah, and I think that like and again, to moderate things a little bit, there are still problems with like some aspects of the detective work and story in this movie, but it is nice to see that they are at least trying to get that in.
Now, did it feel to you like they were leaning too much on feeling like film noir, or feeling like an old school detective movie? Like, did it lean too much on those trappings?
I mean, first off, that's what Batman was, so I don't think you can't look, it is a detective comic. It was very film noir-esque for a long time, so I don't think it's a bad thing. And actually, if anything, it may have gone not far enough to sticking to just that aesthetic, I think maybe.
Yeah, like there's a
If that
lot
makes
of rain in this movie. Like it rains a
Yeah,
lot.
and yeah, oh yeah, no, it rains a lot, but it also doesn't fully get the kind of desperation aspect of a film noir as much. If you understand, do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. I
Like,
mean,
like there is, it's dark and dreary. Like the colors are dark and dreary, and the themes are kind of, but the people aren't all as dark as they could be. And it's not a terrible thing, but it's just like again, there's a bit more that this movie isn't. This movie isn't 100% a film noir because of that, and then it kind of goes into a couple of other like genres which aren't bad but do, I think, weaken the movie a little bit, that it isn't thematically consistent, if that makes sense.
yeah.
But
I think part of what
I don't think the noir was too far at all. I think it was good.
no. I think what part of what makes this feel like a comic book come to life is the cinematography is I mean,
Oh,
people
yeah.
have commented on this. You could tell from the trailers that the cinematography was going to be gorgeous. And man, there are I can't even tell you how many different shots I wish I could have as posters.
Oh yeah, no, this movie was trying really hard to be yeah, a wonderful movie, and a beautiful movie, sorry, and it worked. And it and I think that's also part of what built its character, right? It was that no, this is Gotham City. This is what it feels like. This is what it looks like, and it may have gone overboard in some instances, but on the whole, it was great.
I also really loved the score by Michael Giacchino. He had the very challenging task of trying to make a new iconic Batman theme when there's already been so many of them.
Yeah, it did at time feel a little Danny Elfman-esque.
But I was
Like,
okay with that. It
oh
was
yeah, no, I was okay with it, but it did also seem like at some points he was also kind of going yeah, no, I'm somebody else has done something great. I'm gonna try to pay homage to that because probably that's what people expect.
yeah, I mean the score throughout the whole movie was great, but I particularly like his new theme song for Batman. Someone compared it to the Imperial March from Star Wars, kind of like just the dun dun dun, dun, and this is dun 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 dun. Like there's definitely a almost relentless feel to it, where it's like he's coming for you. Like you better watch
Yeah,
out because he's coming.
and the way they added the sound effects of his boots into it,
Oh yeah.
that was amazing. Every time Batman walks up, you hear his boots, and I think that was really well done.
Batman is such an iconic character that naturally every time there's a new Batman movie, people ask questions like, how was the Batmobile? How was the Batcave? How was the Bat
Oh,
suit?
yes, we're gonna need to talk about all of those things a little
Uh,
bit, at least.
It's just interesting that Batman is so iconic that even the visual elements of his world draw a comparison. So I mean, yeah, this version of the Batmobile is kind of like a muscle car, and I've
Oh
heard people say
god,
that it's shot and framed as if it's like a monster.
I was so happy when I saw that. Look, to me, the Batmobile will always be a Jaguar, and I don't know why I really enjoy that so much. But to me, that's what the Batmobile is. It's a Jag. It's a power car that's been souped up, but it's still just a just a muscle car.
Yeah, the way it was shot, it almost seemed like it was a character because the way it the engine revved and stuff, it seemed like it was like a kind of
Yeah.
like an animal that had a voice almost.
Oh yeah, no, I loved the Batmobile. It was probably my favorite Batmobile.
Wow. Okay, what about the Bat Cave? We don't see a whole lot of it, but it is there.
It was like, it was interesting that the Batcave was underneath Wayne Tower rather than Wayne Manor.
Yeah,
Like,
apparently the in the world of this, it's like an abandoned train station or something, but
oh,
they don't explain it in the movie. You can kind of see a train
well,
in the
you can kind of
background.
see when he drives up to it. I can see that, but yeah, I kind of would have had to have been told, like, I had to be told to, like, really, like, it was like a private subway, kinda like in, Amazing Spider-Man?
Maybe?
'Cause yeah, that still feels a little weird, and, like, yeah, the fact, like, I understand that for this movie, it worked, and it did make a certain degree of sense that, like, it wasn't in Wayne Manor out of town.
I never really understood why would you have your headquarters so far away from everything?
Yeah, no, well, but Wayne Manor is also not that far out of town,
It
it's
isn't,
like,
but it's still like, it's anyway.
yeah, but it's kinda like, why is Arkham, well, no, that makes more sense, it's an asylum, but, like, it is really far from law enforcement in most like, in most of the
Yeah.
Batman things, it's like, you'd think with the profile of prisoners there, they'd have, like, a police station nearby or something, instead of having it, like, in the middle of the countryside, nearish the city.
I don't feel like we see enough of this Batcave to give it like it's kind of like the Michael Keaton Batcave in that you don't really see it's so much of it is in darkness. You only see like certain random parts of it. And you
Yeah,
do get the
but
sense he's still kind of like, he's just it's like a work in progress.
yeah, which is kind of like the theme of this Batman, he's a work in progress, but I think what I like about it is that it still has the connection, like, direct connection to where he's going, and I like that, like, objects were in it. I don't know if
Mm.
that makes, like, you saw the Batmobile in the Batcave before he drove it, right? Like, if you were paying attention in the background, you could see some of the things he was gonna use, and I think that was nice.
I really don't know how to feel about this bat suit, like this Batman costume, because it there's I'm not much of an artist, but I do like drawing sometimes, and I look at this and like this is impossible to draw. Like there's just so many things going on,
I
but when
mean, he's
it's
got a Batarang on it.
yeah, it's true. I mean, this is when it's silhouetted and you can't see any of the details, I think it looks amazing. And I
Yeah,
think the cowl, like whenever like there's shots in this movie, I'm like, he just looks like Batman. He doesn't I don't see Robert
yeah.
Pattinson. I just see Batman.
Comment from Mjolnir that she probably wants me to give out. Robert Pattinson's chin was made to be in a cowl.
Well,
Um,
something I've noticed, like look comparing photos of him to other Batmen, you actually see a lot more of his like lower half of his face. Like most of the Batman cowls, they kind of like
yeah,
it covers up most of their. I'm not doing a good
yeah,
job of describing this, but
because you shouldn't be able to identify him. The point of the cowl is that people don't figure out who he is.
yeah. But anyway, the suit itself, I know it's again, it's supposed to be a work in progress. He's just sort of been adding things to it, but to me, there's just a lot going on.
Yeah, it was a little weird. Like, it is very busy, but I don't think it was bad. You know,
It certainly
I
helped with his like we see Batman interact with
making
the
him
police
look
in
more
this.
buff and less skinny.
Yeah, okay. So I watched a video yesterday where a guy who's like into martial arts and MMA talked about his physique, and he said for what Batman in this movie does, where he basically just a lot of beating people up, he said Robert Pattinson's actually in really good shape for that, and that he shouldn't look like if people are like body shaming him for being too skinny to play Batman. This guy, at least this one YouTuber was like, no, he's exactly the right size. He's certainly not like Batman. In the comics is often drawn like a linebacker, like this huge guy
Yeah,
who, so he
but
doesn't match that. But
yeah, but it, like, and it's not. I guess it isn't a bad thing, but also, I don't know. He does in the movie. He exerts a lot of power for somebody with that. Like, I understand that for fighting and for a lot of the things he does, yes, but then for how hard some of his punches are hitting, it does still, to me, feel like it's a little bit
well,
small. Like,
this YouTuber
you
said
know.
that like some of the best UFC fighters, they don't look jacked.
Yeah, but there's a difference, but like, I think it's more. What I think is more like on the sense of like, you get people who are, like, there's a reason why weight categories exist in fighting, because if you're a certain weight, you can hit harder, and I feel like it kind of somewhat misses that. Like, it just feels like when he punches, it's not like, because MMA is also a lot more about technical skill than raw fighting power, whereas something like boxing is more about power. And I feel like sometimes, and that is probably partially because the Batman comics were done when like boxing was the only real fighting sport, so that's probably part of why he's so big. But at the same time, I don't know, I feel like a guy who can punch somebody through a wall should have a wider back.
All right, fair enough. That didn't bother me. It's also
It only bothered me in that one shot of him where his shirt is off and you see him, like, I think it's when he's spray painting things on the ground. And I was like, little scrawny for a guy who just like punched a full grown man off a platform, and like, you know what I mean?
uh,
It wasn't a constant.
Michael
though.
Keaton was in no discernible shape, so I have a hard time believing Michael Keaton could have beat anyone in a fight. So
Yeah, but he also was in an era where superhero movies were not realistic.
right. This movie has a great supporting cast around, like Robert Pattinson is Batman for most of this movie. We'll talk about his Bruce Wayne in spoilers, but
Okay.
he's great, and then his supporting cast is great.
Yeah. Man, okay. Before we get to whether or not he's the best Batman, best Selena Kyle?
Yes, definitely.
Like, I'm sorry, Michelle Pfeiffer. Like,
I'm sorry,
I
Anne
think-
Hathaway.
oh no, I'm not sorry, Anne Hathaway.
I'm sorry, Eartha Kitt.
Yeah, a little bit more. I'm not sorry, Anne Hathaway though. No, best Catwoman for sure. And we're
Yeah, I mean-
obviously not sorry, Halle Berry.
Colin
Not that
Farrell.
it's entirely her fault, but still.
Colin Farrell is basically unrecognizable as Oz / the Penguin, and he's great.
That was Colin Farrell?
That was Colin Farrell.
Holy, I did not realize that at all.
Yeah,
he is unrecognizable. That was impressive, and he doesn't have his accent.
Yeah. He sounds like De Niro or somebody.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, no, that was amazing. Also, I can't remember the guy who played Falcone.
Oh, John Turturro from the Transformers movies.
Yeah, no, John Turturro was great.
Oh
like,
yeah, he was amazing.
Yeah, no, like I think like, all right, Andy Serkis was not the more traditional gentlemanly Alfred, but at the same time, he was also probably a slightly more believable that this guy was in Her Majesty's Secret Service Alfred.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it. No, I think and like his performance was great.
Yeah, and Jeffrey Wright was great as Gordon as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love, and he and Robert Pattinson had good chemistry.
Yeah.
Like, and it was kind of important to the movie. So no, that like, and also Riddler, like, he both as the Riddler persona and as what was his name? They didn't call him Edward Nygma. I'm still mad about that.
Edward Nashton.
Yeah, Edward. Come on, Nygma isn't that weird of like. I understand that it's kind of a joke name, but if you don't say Enigma, it's subtle enough that I don't think it's a problem.
Did you notice? I mean, some people have pointed this out, that the glasses the Riddler wears when he's like in his Riddler persona are basically the same ones that Jim Carrey's Edward Nygma wore.
Yes,
that was a fun Easter egg.
Yeah, but also I don't know. I think it worked, and there are definitely versions of the Riddler that are more like that and less like Jim Carrey.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're gonna dive into spoilers here, but just to say, this is an honest to gosh detective Batman story, told very well. There are flaws with it, which we'll dive into with our spoiler talk. So if you don't want to get spoiled for anything, we're gonna put a time code in the description so you can skip around. But we're definitely inside the spoiler verse now. Just one little example of a moment that took me out of the movie is when Batman opens up that cage with the bat inside it, and he grabs the clue from the top of the cage. And I was just thinking, how the heck is that bat not flying out of this cage right now? They're really expecting me to suspend my disbelief.
Oh, wow. See, my biggest thing around the clues for suspension of disbelief was kind of like was the fact that Batman opened a lot of those clues without first like making sure they weren't trapped.
Mm.
Like that seemed weird to me. It's like even just a little glance, like something to pay, to be like he's not just an idiot running into things. Although, again, he was a younger Batman, so maybe he is just an idiot running into things.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Riddler, I mean, I couldn't help but feel like they were trying to do a different version of Heath Ledger Joker, like with some of the moments where he's like talking to the news camera and stuff. I'm like, I feel like I've seen this
Kind
before.
of. Look, this is okay. So this is one of the bigger problems I have with the movie, is that thematically it was a little bit all over the place. I don't think they were trying to do Ledger's Joker. I think that's a little too that's a little exaggerated to say that, because I don't think there was enough. Like, I understand like the video was somewhat similar, but I don't think it I don't think it was similar enough to make it work, because at the same time they were obviously like drawing inspiration for him from like serial killer movies, like specifically Seven or the Zodiac Killer. Like he had those a lot more of those vibes than I think Heath Ledger Joker vibes. Like my biggest problem with him was less that and more just that he was too much like Bane in The Dark Knight Rises.
Mm.
Like, but in the way that Bane was very clumsily written in The Dark Knight Rises. Or at least his plan was. Like, it just seemed weird. His plan didn't make sense. Like, the first half is... we're going to talk about that, right? The second half of his plan. Like...
Well, yeah, so when you said earlier, you mentioned, this fell into the traps of being a superhero movie. The whole climax where, like, there's bombs going off and there's all the water.
That was so pointless. You could have added... You see, here's the thing that also, like, Mjolnir was pointing out, like, there was something she wanted to see, and I was like, yeah, no, that could have worked. And you could have, like, there were decent enough places where you could have, like, stopped or done something different. Like, I think, like, yeah, I don't know. It just felt like too much at the end. And again, like, that whole thing that people had a problem with in The Dark Knight, like, I think it's a weird thing that this movie manages to make some of the same major mistakes as The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, but only at in the second half of its third act.
Yeah, like they could have found a way to have the movie end sooner. I mean, having
and
that
sooner and end better too.
Yeah, having the climax with him trying to save people. I think for me, it all hinges on that moment where he unmasks that one Riddler clone, and he like repeats back, "I'm vengeance," and you see the look of kind of shock on Batman's face.
That should have been the end. Like around that should have been that could have been toward. I think that could have been the end, or at least the end of that action sequence.
Sure.
And then do something about what he's about Bruce Wayne moving forward.
Yeah, but just to finish my thought there.
Yeah, sorry.
It's where Batman realizes he's already kind of seen it through the Riddler that the influence he's having on the city is not positive. But then to see that the very goon he beat up earlier in the movie is now kind of repeating back his own mantra to him, he's like, "Oh, I'm really not helping here."
Oh yeah, no. And I like that. Like they took that fairly, standard Batman is the cause of his villains, and they did it in a pretty good way, I think. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And we meet him at the start of this movie. He basically doesn't care about being Bruce Wayne. He's so focused. He's convinced that all he needs to do is be Batman. So I've heard people complain, well, there's not a lot of Bruce Wayne in this, and he doesn't feel like Bruce Wayne because he's just sort of like the shell of a man. And I was okay with it because this is it's a different take, and two, by the end of the movie, he realizes that he has to be more than what he is. And we also find out that, you know, part of the corruption of the city is that the Wayne Foundation has basically just been siphoned for, you know, all kinds of whatever different neat things, and that comes because there was no oversight. So Bruce has to come to grips with the fact that because I wasn't living my life as Bruce Wayne, the city was suffering.
Yeah, and like all of that also like works thematically with both the fact that he's a younger Batman and the fact that he's kind of that he needs to be more than what he is. Like the path he's going down is not the right path. It will cause death and destruction, and it will be his fault. And I think that was something that was really cool. And to that point, like we didn't really talk that much about the best Batman, but like I think that makes him both a better Bruce Wayne and better to some degree Batman than um ooh Christopher Nolan's
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale. Like, and I understand both of them were good Batmans for the setting they were given, but Christian Bale's Batman, I know he was trained by the League of Shadows, and I know they pay some lip service to him improving at the beginning, but it happens really fast. Like, he's almost immediately proficient. And
Yeah.
that was always a little bit jarring. And I feel like this, like, Robert Pattinson's Batman is a lot more like, I'm still figuring this out. And even within the movie, they show it. Within the movie, he got better, right? Because the two scenes of him breaking into the club
Yeah.
are very different, right? At the beginning of the movie, he just punches his way in, goes to talk to Penguin, and like muscles his way through. In the second one, he makes people disappear. He's sneaking through. He's creating confusion. He is the Knight, you know? And like, again, the cinematography for that fight scene that's only lit by gunfire, amazing. But also highlights the fact that he is still figuring these things out and getting better at it, even like within the story.
One of my complaints with the story and a missed opportunity is I really feel like they should have let more time elapse with the Thomas Wayne reveal before Bruce ends up finding out that, oh, he actually wasn't that bad. Because it's like there's this big reveal that comes in this movie that, oh, you know, Thomas Wayne wasn't as good a man as we thought he was. But then literally in like the next scene, Alfred wakes up and is like, no, you know, you were being told a lie. And I would have loved to have had more time for Bruce to sit with that, to believe that that was true before it was retconned by Alfred.
Yeah, it like I think it also kind of highlights, somebody pointed this out in a podcast that Mjolnir was listening to, and I think I couldn't quite figure it out, but then I heard it, I'm like, yeah, that is the problem I had, was that there wasn't really like the conclusion to the mystery didn't work. Like, it was good that it was a detective story, and I liked all the detective work, but it kind of just ended in a weird place.
Well,
Like,
Riddler's whole point was to try and prove that you couldn't trust anyone in Gotham City, that everyone in a position of authority was a liar covering up something.
yeah, and always would be. But that's the thing, is that he went from being somebody who makes sense to somebody who is completely radicalized, but also like you had the mystery of what happened to Anya, and that just kind of sort of gets resolved but isn't really there. And like it's just like I get that that was the Riddler's plan, but then also was like but also his plan was to kill Carmine Falcone, like not just expose him but kill him and then kill other people who are trying to undo what he did. Like it seemed like, again, and I think the third act was a layer too much.
Yeah. No, I would agree with you.
And like even if it was something where he had like Batman, I'm okay with the twist of Batman having missed something, but I think it would have been better if it was like a bomb that was going to go off on the new mayor or something like that, like instead of like what it ended up being. Because again, like I said, it felt a little bit like, the complaint people had about, well, how did Heath Ledger's Joker blow up an entire hospital and all the bridges, like, and everything else. Like it seemed like a lot for him to have done alone. Because
Yeah.
even though there were people who were, helping him and talking to him, like talking him through how to do his terrorist things, it was still him doing everything.
I did like the Bruce Wayne fake out though, where we're led to believe the Riddler has figured out that Bruce Wayne is Batman,
Yeah,
and then it turns out he doesn't.
but there was also just a part of it that to me was kind of weird. Like he's like, "You're not as smart as you think you are," and it's like immediately I was like, "Well, clearly neither are you because you had all the information to figure out Batman is Bruce Wayne and you didn't." Like it was a good fake out, but also it kind of like diminished Riddler's own intelligence. But I think it worked. And the singing of Ave Maria was amazing.
Yeah. I also liked this orphan narrative they kind of built around this version of the Riddler. I thought it was very poignant. It was like, oh, like everyone was so sad to find about poor Bruce Wayne's parents being killed. Meanwhile, he's like, he's living the life of a rich person. While we have all of us orphans who are just kind of getting by at the orphanage and no one cares about us. I thought that was very like, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And I could see why you would hate Bruce Wayne because of that.
Yeah. Although I think it did, the fact that he focused really hard on that kind of undercut him being pissed at Bruce Wayne for not handling the Wayne Foundation fund properly. Because thematically, again, with what he was trying to do, that made more sense. That he was annoyed that Bruce Wayne never took over and helped fight the corruption because he could have. He could have taken responsibility for his dad's money and his dad's fund being used by a corrupt official and the mob, but he didn't.
Yeah. I'm also honestly, even though it was interesting, I'm still a little annoyed they continue to, like, after the Joker movie made Thomas Wayne look like out to be a terrible person. And I can't help but feel it's like we're living in this world now where rich people can't be the good guys anymore. Like we always have to find a way to make rich people evil.
Yeah, and again, the third act kind of hits that. And like the problem I have with some of it is like it's a decent message, but this is like the third Batman universe movie in a row that's gone there. Well, not in a row, but like The Dark Knight Rises did it poorly. Joker did it decently. And then this movie did it half-heartedly. And it just like, but the fact that it was the third movie in recent history, the third Batman movie in recent history to kind of do the like eat the rich storyline, it was like, did we really need that again? Like, I know Batman is a great hero to put that into because he is incredibly rich, but at the same time, the point of the whole Batman and Bruce Wayne, which they're kind of getting to, is that Bruce Wayne is trying to help thing, right?
Yeah. It was also interesting in this continuity, Martha is from the Arkham family, and they
Was
established that.
that ever
Oh,
a thing?
I don't
Like
know if
the
that's a
Arkham
thing
being
or
a
not.
family? Because Arkham is a place in in New England that H.P. Lovecraft loves to talk about because it's near where he grew up. But like, I don't
Well,
think it was ever a family name.
well, in this version it is, and they make it that the Waynes and the Arkhams are like the two founding families of Gotham. So, I've heard other versions call Bruce Wayne the Prince of Gotham, but now in this version where, he's a descendant of both of the original families, I can totally see why he'd be perceived that way.
Yeah, it does kind of make it a little bit more direct, but I'm not sure. Like, it kind of went nowhere.
Yeah, it
That's what I
didn't.
didn't really
Yeah,
like.
it's more so just for us to postulate in the background. But so the movie ends with him kind of realizing that he can't just be vengeance. He has to also be justice, and he has to be more than what he is. And so you see him kind of stepping out of the shadows more and trying to like help people. So this leaves the question: like, where do you want to see Robert Pattinson's Batman go next?
Ah, well,
Or do you want to see him anymore?
No, I do. Well, I'm not like I could go either way with his particular representation, but I do want this universe to keep going, and he's kind of part of it. And like that sounds bad. Like it sounds like I think he didn't do well. I think he did really well, but again, he was a Bruce Wayne and a Batman adapted to the story rather than what I expect Batman to be. And maybe in future movies he will get to that. But right now, it just, like Christian Bale, it just feels like this is the Batman this movie needed him to be. It's not a bad version of him, but like, or of Bruce Wayne, but it's still not the character like I would like to see. And that Ben Affleck was the closest to that. A Batman who is really in his prime and is fully Batman. He's also fully Bruce Wayne trying to fix problems, buying a bank to help out Clark Kent, like, that kind of thing. And so I would like that. I would like him to get to that point. But at the same time, there's also, as I understand it, this may be a setup for a bunch of different, for specifically No Man's Land.
Yeah, that could be a thing.
Where Gotham is basically excommunicated from the United States because it's too crazy and left to its own device.
Yeah, they kind of did that in
they
Dark Knight Rises and in the Gotham TV show.
Yeah, and so like they might do that. This feels like a better setup for it. But I don't know. I figure like I want to see him grow as a character. I want to see him start becoming more Bruce Wayne and maybe even like let Batman take a slight backseat for a bit. Like almost see an overcorrection before he gets back to the middle, like he gets to the middle ground where he needs to be both. I think that would be nice. Like, because again, it's something The Dark Knight Rises kind of did, but not really, because the reason Christian Bale was not being Batman was because he was injured, not strictly because he thought he did damage. I would like to see that. And I would like to, just see
What
this
about
Gotham
villains?
City ecology kind of grow. Villains?
Yeah,
I
like
think
who do you
they've
want to
set
be?
up all the ones we need. Like the Joker's in there. Be nice to see. I really want Harvey Dent, but not necessarily Two-Face, to appear soon.
I know some people are really clamoring for like a good version of Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on record saying I don't mind Batman and Robin that much, and I don't mind Arnold Schwarzenegger that much as Mr. Like it worked. Like there were other much worse things about that movie, but like I think it could be interesting, but I also don't. I feel like they have to do one more movie where things aren't as ridiculous to kind of transition from no superpowers to some superpowers. And I know it's not technically a superpower, it's science, but it's superpowered science.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see like Hugo Strange in one of these movies. People might know him from one of the Arkham games. I would love to see Clayface. Doesn't have to be like shapeshifter Clayface. It can be like one that just, disguises himself when he kills people.
I think there's a good argument for bringing Scarecrow into this Gotham.
Let's get more villains we haven't seen before. Like we've seen, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Killer. Oh wait, there was Killer Croc in Suicide Squad. Never mind.
All right, Max Zeus coming in and trying to make a profit out of the aftermath.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Being an antagonist for Bruce Wayne.
I also feel like
really good.
I feel like we're on the track to getting a good version of Robin, because like Robin was introduced in the comics at a time when Batman was getting too dark, and so having Robin around helped them kind of like bring himself from going too far over the edge. And I feel like where this version of Bruce Wayne ends this movie, that we could at least get that set up in the next one. Like maybe have him go to the circus and have Dick Grayson's parents kill the next one. Get that setup going.
Yeah, but also, I don't know. He is kind of a young Batman to have a Robin.
Well, look, Batman had only been around for like 2 years in the comics before Robin came around. So it's not like there was that much time that passed.
Yeah, but but at the same time, Batman was a better Batman, a more kind of established person than this Batman currently is. So I don't like. I like it, but I'm not sure it would happen. Also, it kind of felt like they were trying to look. As soon as I saw the mayor's kid, and they had their like weird staring thing, I was like, "Oh, that's a future Robin." Probably not, but still.
So coming around to final thoughts, I really love the Batman, the movie, not the series from 2004. It's a gorgeous movie to look at. There's some amazing performances, but it's not perfect. There are definitely mistakes in there. I believe this is probably the best version of Batman we've seen in live action. And even though that has issues, I still really, really enjoyed it. So I'll give The Batman 2022 3.6 out of 4 Bat Cookies.
I'll give it a 3.7 just because most of the issues I had came after the movie. Like when I started thinking about it. Because even the jarring length of the finale only really hit me when I was like, that's why that movie was 3 hours.
So there's no sequel announced for this movie yet, but they have confirmed that this version of the Penguin is getting his own miniseries for HBO Max. And then they're also developing a Arkham Asylum spinoff that's supposed to be like also a Gotham PD series set in this universe. So there's a couple HBO Max TV spinoffs confirmed for this. I'm sure we'll get an announcement of a sequel soon because the movie has been doing well financially. So if you have not seen The Batman yet, go see it in theaters. You won't regret it.
If you want to reach the show, you can send us an email at
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
You can find the Bat Jar podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, because we got a channel. Share our posts on Facebook, write reviews, give our shows a rating. This will help all people join us inside the Bat Jar, and we appreciate it dearly.
For our episode next week, instead of just going inside the Bat Jar, I want to celebrate Canadian culture a bit here because the latest Pixar movie, Turning Red, was supposed to get released in theaters, and it's, the director of this movie is from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and she chose to set the movie in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So I was really excited that a big movie that was going to get released around the world would, showcase Canada, showcase Toronto. And then Disney, for whatever reason, decided to make it an exclusive Disney Plus release, not even doing the premium access thing. They just throw it on there for free, like they have done with the last couple of Pixar films. So we're going to celebrate it next week. We're going to talk about it. It reminds me of this show I watched as a kid called Monster by Mistake, which I tried to introduce Beef Pork Ribs to before our episode, and I don't think he was quite fond of that.
It just gave me flashbacks of a worse version of Reboot.
So Turning Red is on Disney Plus. Go watch it. Help us celebrate Canadian culture. And we'll come back next week to talk about it. So until then, I'm Average Joe.
And I'm Beef Pork Ribs.
Catch you on the flip side.